Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Namaste Experience. This is actually part two of our recording. We had started the session, but we're interrupted. The Zoom session went somewhere, and but we're back. So we're going to see if we can record this section. Don't be surprised if suddenly we dissolve. Anyway, I was talking about this idea that one day after I've done whatever it is I think I need to do, that maybe one day I'll be enlightened. And when I was at Endeavor Academy, first arriving, there were those who had been ordained as the high bright ones. And then there were the low dim ones. And I can remember showing up there thinking, maybe one day, maybe I can be counted amongst these special beings. In other words, maybe one day the master teacher will look at me and say, James, you've arrived. In fact, that kind of happened many years later, after I left and I was living in Ashland, and one day I remember coming into the office, and someone there said, there's a message for you from someone called the master teacher. And immediately I felt like the principal had just called. What? Really? What did he say? He just said, call him. I said, okay, so I called him up, and we just had a conversation about movies. And at the very end, he said, thank you, Master Jimmy. Yes. Finally, I've had an authority outside of me tell me I've arrived. But almost instantaneously, I caught it. No. That's not what this is all about. There's no authority outside of who I am. And who I am is filled with light, is already whole. So this idea that maybe one day in the future, the tumblers will fall into place. Let me tell you something. The tumblers fell into place a long time ago, even before time began. The tumblers never fell out of place. Now, as we've so often said, there is a difference between being filled with light or enlightened and being awake to your enlightenment. That's what we're coming into. We've been asleep. We've been dreaming, impossible dreams. And just like here at Namaste, when it's time to have session and the bell begins to ring, and that's the sign that everyone come on in, the same thing is happening for us right now. The bell is ringing. It's telling us to come on back, come home, remember who you really are. Now, often that will appear as a spiritual path, and there are certain spiritual paths or teachers or whatever they may be that have immense numbers of people following them. There are other spiritual paths that have a very small core of people attending or participating. And it might be tempting to say, well, this group with an enormous number of people must be doing something very important, or this particular teacher must be someone very special. But this little group who are kind of over here to the side, this little Namaste Village, there's a few people, but, it's not like one of these really big groups, people that, attracting huge numbers of not only people who come to sit at the feet of the master, but to read everything, to watch everything that comes out. The popular spiritual path. Well, I want to talk a little bit about the popular spiritual path. So let me read something here first. A true spiritual path is never popular. Woo! And a popular spiritual path is never true. A true path will always be unpopular because it requires so much of you. It requires that you give all to all of yourself, while the popular spiritual path asks that you only give some or most of yourself. If you want to be free, you must be willing to give everything to everything. Once again, if you want to be free, give everything to everything. And there's no popular spiritual path on the planet that goes that far, to give everything, unless it's all of your money. Why? Because popular spiritual paths are designed to keep you bound to the world, not release you from it. You know, I'll pause there and say, there's been a big fad for the last 20 so years that we'll call personal growth. And I've often thought that there's a big difference between personal growth and spiritual growth. Okay, personal growth is all about more. Spiritual growth is about less. It's about dissolving. It's about releasing. But this is where people get caught usually, in the idea that I want to go to someone like Tony Robbins or follow The Secret or whoever it might be, so that I can get all the things I don't have and somehow be enriched. Have the house, have the money, have all of these things that I may not have now. And in getting them, I have demonstrated my spiritual evolution. But spiritual growth is literally the opposite. It's about releasing all of those desires, all of those needs, and coming with holy, empty hands unto your God. I just thought I'd mention that. A popular spiritual path offers the illusion of spiritual growth, but never the deep dive into the actual experience of now. It teaches the use of spiritual law to accumulate goods rather than goodness, or riches rather than richness. This distracts you from the only path that has true power, the unpopular path that requires that you give all to all. And here's what you'll find when you decide to follow this path: joy beyond joy and love beyond love. Joy beyond every idea that you've ever had of what joy is, an experience of love beyond any concept that you've ever had of it. Until you determine that you want nothing less than joy and love without opposite, you will receive a small measure of these, but not the total measure that you're seeking. And we become satisfied with that small measure. At least I'm getting some joy, at least I'm experiencing some love. But then we forget that what the soul is longing for is all in all. This is the only thing that will satisfy us, because you are all in all. Therefore, you receiving the same as what you are. This is what awakening is. This is what being awake really is. Your heart has already decided what it wants, but your mind is determined to limit your exposure to these gifts. But you have come to the point where you can be limited no more. Your heart has opened and you see what is so clear to be seen. Is that true? Your heart is finally open and you can see what is so clear to be seen. The shadows that block the sight of your eternal nature have been dispelled simply by shining a light in their direction. And now that you are gone, now that the concept of you has dissolved, you are free. You're free to be who you've always been, free to experience that which has no opposite. What more do you need than that? So here we are, we find ourselves on the cusp of this experience, almost as if we've come to this door that says heaven, and we open the door and we marvel at what's going on inside. And we put one foot in, and maybe there's still parts of us that are afraid to put both feet in. Maybe we're riding that fence, like, and the temptation may be to look at the experience, to observe everything that's going on, and then to run back and think that your job now is to tell everybody else. Guess what? There's nobody else to tell. It's time to step in. There's no waiting. There's no reason for you to hesitate. When you feel this experience beginning to well up inside you, go for it. I know it's happening to each and every single person. We talked about the bell a moment ago, how when that bell rings at the beginning of session, that means come on in, it's time to start. Well, the bell is going off inside you. You all feel that. There's something that is beginning to rise, and it's like an alarm clock. Who set the alarm? Who decided what time you were going to wake up? Of course. Now, if you're like me, you probably hit that snooze button a few times. I actually hit it about 3 times less than normal this morning because I wanted to get up and be here before Vicky left, and I just barely made it. But it's time to stop hitting that snooze button. It's time to open our eyes and finally see the real world that's shining before us now. It's time to take that final step into the experience of heaven here and now. The only question is, why would you wait? What is there to possibly wait for? Has the world of not realizing this light ever given you what you really want? It's time to stop looking for the popular spiritual path and give yourself wholly to the only spiritual path that is real. Are you with me? Yes, you are, indeed. We're in this together. How blessed are we, whether you live here at Namaste Village or not, whether you just tune in either on Zoom or whether you watch the YouTube clips, or whether, I know some of you are off at home or on other adventures and you still tune in because you know that having this consistent reminder makes an enormous difference, helps us to stay on track, because it is so easy to get caught by the gravitational pull of the ego and get pulled back. Whenever you feel that happening, just remember what you really want. What you really want is to know that you are one with God and with all. And the only way to activate that is to give all to all. That's all. And if I was Porky Pig, I would say, that's all, folks. And to this we say, Amen, 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 y punto.